we get to have our very own Sarah Hanks speak with none other than Commissioner Peirce. And obviously everybody's curious to learn about the role of the commission. We're all excited because of the role the commission has played in RegA and other regulations. So today we get an opportunity to have them both have a fireside chat and speak to all of us. Welcome, Commissioner Peirce. It's a pleasure to meet you for the very first time virtually. And Sarah, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thanks, Oscar. It's really weird to do fireside chats, sort of, you know, in the middle of absolutely nowhere, as opposed. I know. I did actually think about having sort of fake fire that we could superimpose, and that just got too complicated. But Commissioner Peirce, thank you very much for being with us. And I think a lot of people know your background, but I was just looking back through your resume, which is such a perfect DC resume. So, Commissioner at the SEC, confirmed by the Senate twice. You've been with a think tank. You've been on Capitol Hill as a staffer. You have been an SEC staffer, and you've been in a private law firm. I don't think there's any part of the DC experience that you have missed out on here. And as we'll talk about later, I mean, maybe that whole record is useful in your role as a commissioner. But I just wanted to ask you about you know, how it feels to be a commissioner. And in order to do that, I just wanted to step back and explain to people who might not understand it, the way that the commission works. It's an independent agency. It's not part of the executive branch. There are 5 commissioners who are no more than 3 of whom can be of the same party. So there's sort of bipartisanship built in there. They are appointed by the Senate. Sorry, they are confirmed by the Senate, appointed by the administration. And I hope you're still there, because you've gone blank on my screen. I don't know if Oscar, could you? It's interesting. I don't know if we might have lost Commissioner Peirce for a moment, but anyway.
What happened? You discussed fire and that's it?
I don't know.
I will see if I can.
All right, or I said bipartisanship, and maybe that's not a thing that you know, that causes computers to blow up these days.
Let's see if we can get her back on. There's no virtual event without its little glitches.
Oh, there she is. All right. So yeah, as I was saying, the whole role of a commissioner maybe not fully understood, because you've got 5 commissioners, and against that you've got a staff, a permanent staff, Washington bureaucracy, and I was a staffer too, so I love them, but it's 5 commissioners against a permanent staff of 4,500 or thereabouts. And so one of the questions I have for you is, how much influence can a commissioner have? I mean, how can you impose your thoughts and your personality on such a huge bureaucratic machine? I don't know if we've, can you hear us, Commissioner Peirce? That's.
Wow, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I said bureaucratic machine. I mean, obviously I'm being bugged or something by the by the SEC staff itself.
That is odd. I mean, it's been working. She is there. So I'm gonna, there's nothing blocking. So I don't know how she's plugged into a speaker, or I apologize to everyone for for the little technology hiccup.
I'm sure we'll get her. I saw a chat there.
Yes, we have unmuted her. I mean, so she's unmuted now. So if she is there, we're asking them to share their video with us to start on the camera. There's two versions of them online right now. So, okay, so let's see. This is a very odd. We haven't experienced this
maybe
before.
if Commissioner Peirce can hear us, she could just say something. It doesn't sound like.
I'm unmuted. We see her.
We see you, but we can't hear you.
We can't hear you. So we're having a technical challenge. Wow. For some reason, her computer is either the microphone is not on. And I'm trying to figure out, there's not much I can do on my end. Let me see, I'm getting some tips here from everyone.
Yes, there's lots of tips coming through.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody. Her audio is not connected. Yes, she needs to connect to an alternative device. Maybe it's her browser. Yes, no, she's unmuted. She'll come right back in. Probably what happened is everybody else scared her. Be nice to the commissioner, everyone.
Oh.
So, no, it's okay, Sarah. I mean, it's been a great day today. It's amazing the speakers today. It's a different event than we had the one in March. Do you recall that we were still at the, not so much, these are all the things you got to do. Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Commissioner Peirce, can you say something?
Finally, I can hear something.
Oh, fantastic. It's finally, you know, I did an introduction for you, and when you didn't do anything,
I'm so sorry. Why don't we just hop right into the substance? I apologize.
All right, so the substance is with a commission that has 5 commissioners and a permanent bureaucratic staff of 4,500 people or more. How much influence can a commissioner have? I mean, how do you try to show, how do you try and introduce things that you think are important?
Well, I think the design of the commission, and I should start by saying that part of the benefit of being a part of a 5-member commission is that my views represent my own views and not necessarily those of my fellow commissioners. But I think one of the benefits is that you do have a diversity of opinions on the commission and a diversity of experiences, and we all bring that to the table. And so while the chairman does set the agenda, I think each one of us has an important role to play in highlighting issues that's important to us particularly. And so the topic of today's conversation, capital formation, is one that I think is really important, especially in a time like this where we're seeing so many small businesses go out of business. But I hope that we'll also see, coming out of this COVID crisis, I hope that we'll also see a whole raft of new businesses starting. And so thinking about ways to get capital to small businesses is something that I care about. And I think my colleagues care about it as well. But I think each of us can kind of bring to the table ideas we have for how we might spur capital formation. And I think we feed off each other. So I think it's actually a very healthy dynamic.
And is there some way that if something is important to you, you're able to just reach out to the people in the various divisions? And just as a reminder to our audience, there are 5 divisions. The one that we care about most right now is Corp Fin, because they're the guys who help us raise the money. Are you able to just sort of go over there and say, hey, Bill, it would be a really good idea if these rules were to be changed or added?
Yeah, I mean, certainly right now I'm not going over anywhere, but we can. I do virtually reach out, and we have regular meetings with Bill and with others on the CorpFin staff. There's a very good back and forth. recognizing always that the chairman is the boss of the staff, and it's ultimately a reporting line to him, but we have a lot of great conversations, and I think that's a really important dynamic. So that's why I do tell people, come talk to me and tell me what issues are important to you, and then I can go and take those down to the staff and raise them with the staff. Without hearing that from outsiders, it's hard for me to know what to put at the top of the list to talk about with Bill and others in Corp Fin.
And I will note that several of our clients have reached out to you over the years, and you've given us a great hearing, whether it was issuers or whether it was intermediaries, and they very much appreciate the fact that they can talk to a commissioner who's in a slightly different role than the staff. I mean, the one thing that I've always known, of course, I'm biased, I'm a former staffer, people don't realize that you can actually go to the SEC and say, I don't understand, or this is really stupid, and what can I do about it? It might not move things. I mean, we are talking about, an institution that's got a lot of laws, but people will listen, and we've always very much appreciated that, the role that you especially play there.
Yeah, and I think the staff, the point that you make is a good one. The staff is really has an open door policy as well, and want to hear from people. And so I think people should feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling the SEC. It's a little bit intimidating if you haven't worked in the building, but certainly there's an openness to hearing from people, and it really is important to keep those lines of communication open.
Thanks. One thing that always strikes me is because, as I mentioned earlier, the commission is made up of 5 people, no more than 3 of whom can be of the same party, if they do have a party affiliation. Is it more difficult for the party that is in the minority, or is that just meaningless because the issues sort of cross over bipartisan lines?
Well, I think that the issues that we deal with, financial regulation, are not inherently political issues. And so we're not thinking about ourselves with labels attached. As I said, different folks have different interests and different issues that are important to them, but that can, there can be crossover. And so I think it really is more a question of, are you chairman with the agenda under your control and the staff under your control, or are you a commissioner and not the chairman? But again, this Chairman Clayton, has been really a wonderful person to work with. He is extremely hardworking and expects everyone else to be hardworking, but he also is very open to hearing suggestions of what should be on the agenda and what issues are important to us. So I think a lot of it comes down to how the chairman runs the agency, and this chairman has really done a fantastic job.
Thanks. One of the things that comes to me, because having been a staffer in the past, is do you think it helps for a commissioner to have been a staffer in knowing all of the little secrets and all of the little tricks and trying to persuade people to do things?
I think it helps to know the building a bit, to know what, it really, each agency has its own personality. The SEC certainly has its own personality, and even within the SEC, each division has its own personality, and it's helpful to have some sense of that when you come in. And indeed, now we have 4 of us have had staff experience, and so I think we all come to it with that. But the commission can really, a commissioner can be successful with or without SEC experience, and people who have had other experiences can bring that to the job. So I wouldn't say one way or the other. It's a definite need to have that experience, but it can be helpful.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed something recently, and I don't know whether I'm seeing something that isn't actually happening, or maybe it's COVID related. It seems that in recent months, if not years, there have been fewer open meetings at the SEC, and just to give people a little bit of a background, the Sunshine Act, the government in the Sunshine Act says basically that you can't form little cliques. You can't. I remember the days when two commissioners would not get into the elevator at the same time. Now, of course, they wouldn't do that because they'd get COVID. But that you can't sort of go off in a corner. All of the debate has to be in the public. And I remember that there used to be a lot more, at least I imagine there used to be a lot more debate in the public meetings than there are now. Am I just making that up?
Well, so first of all, two commissioners can speak to each other. It's when you get three of us in a room that the Sunshine Act starts to be problematic. But I think as long as I remember, so I started at the commission as a staffer about 20 years ago. And I never remember a time when there was a lot of discussion at open meetings. However, occasionally there is, and there has been some back and forth in recent meetings. But as you point out, we have done some fairly major rulemakings and done them without an open meeting. And I think that's just really an expedience issue. It takes quite a few staff resources to put together to get ready for the open meeting and to do the work associated with it. And especially in a time where we're doing everything virtually. I mean, as you can tell, I'm clearly not the best with technology. So I find the virtual format rather frustrating for open meetings. But I think there is something to be said for a dynamic where you can have somewhat of a conversation. And I think if you look back over the past year or so, you will find some open meetings where there's been some back and forth and some interesting dialogue. But I think I try to be fairly transparent about where I'm coming from, and I think my fellow commissioners do the same thing. And so I think that's really what the Sunshine Act is trying to achieve.
Oh, thanks. So now I wanted to turn to Regulation A itself and some issues that are relating to Regulation A. And one of the things is something that might not obviously be part of Regulation A, which is the accredited investor change. Just as a reminder to everybody, there is a limit to the amount that people can invest in Reg A. Accredited investors can invest as much as they like in any offering or all offerings, whereas non-accredited investors can invest only 10% of their net worth or their net income in any particular offering. And the Commission has just proposed and adopted a change to the accredited investor definition. And so first question with respect to accredited investors, where do we go from here? Is this it? It was relatively modest. It was just people who have taken these exams can be accredited investors. Now, some of them, if they're over 40, they probably already are. So you're talking about the so-called Henrys, the high earner, not rich yet. So they'll eventually become accredited. So where do we go from here? What's the roadmap? And can we expect to see more people in that category?
Well, so you're correct that the recent rule change was not a dramatic one as far as individuals go. It did broaden the scope of accredited investor for institutions in some meaningful ways. And I think what I took away as being the really positive piece of this is that it opened the door and it said, we're not going to assess individuals solely based on how rich you are or how high your income is. We're going to look at things other than that. And we open the door for people to come in and suggest other ways to qualify as accredited. And that's where I think the really important stuff is going to happen. It's going to happen when people come into us and say, hey, I've established this credential, or we think this credential should qualify someone as being accredited. So I'm hopeful that will open the door a bit broader.
Right. And eventually we could see the accredited pool, which people sometimes say, well, it's only 1 or 2%. Actually, I think the Commission has measured the accredited pool at something like 12% of the population, although a lot of those are old people who just have a vacation home and aren't investing much. So we should see a much broader pool of people actually investing. How, from a philosophical point of view, could that be like eventually 50% of the population? And would that be wrong? I mean, where do you draw the line for people who don't need the protection of registration?
Well, I mean, I draw the line in a place that not too many other people perhaps do draw the line, but I tend to approach it from a libertarian perspective, which is that in the United States, people believe in individual liberty, and with that comes responsibility. And so people should have the freedom to think about how they want to invest their money. We give people, or people have the freedom, we don't give it to them. They have the freedom to spend their money as they like in many contexts. So why should this context be different? Now, I certainly share the concerns that motivated the accredited investor standard, which is you do worry about people losing a lot of money and jeopardizing their retirement and their children's education funds and so forth. So I understand those concerns, but I think they're better addressed in ways of reminding people that you need to ask a lot of questions. If you're not getting the information that you need to make a decision, then you should just run the other way. And so I think it really comes from us reminding people that the decision is ultimately that person's decision, and it's not we're not clearing any investments anyway. We don't do merit review. So no matter whether you're investing in the private markets or the public markets, we want you to ask lots of questions and we want you to think about it, or we want you to hire someone who can help you think about those things. And when I say we want you to do it, in the sense that that's sort of the model in which the SEC can function, because the SEC isn't a merit regulator, and so it assumes responsibility on the part of the investor.
I think that's an important point. That the SEC's view is full disclosure. I mean, it is possible to go out, in theory, as a registered company or a Reg A company, and you cannot ever say that the SEC has approved anything. All you can say is the SEC's finished asking questions and they've said we can start raising money. But in theory, you could have a Reg A offering who says in the risk factors, we're raising money to do X. We've never done X. We've got no experience in X. We're probably really bad at it. Here, I'm a pastry chef and my partner here cleans cars for a living, and we are trying to create a biotech company. And in theory, the staff should, after you've raised, given enough risk factors, let the offering go through. I've always found that in those circumstances, the staff in CorpFin will just keep asking questions until you are on, amendment number 17, and you know that this is never going to go through. But at least in theory, even completely speculative offers can be done when enough information is provided. And I think that's an important thing about the role that the SEC plays. Shifting to the question that everybody's got, I see in the chat, the increase in offering size. Currently, as we know, $50 million. The statute says $50 million, but you can keep an eye on it and you can change it. The proposal in March said we're proposing 75 million, but it also asked whether should it be 100 million, and quite a lot of us said, yeah, that wouldn't be bad, you should do that. Could you just weigh in on, everybody wants to know when. I'm not going to hold you to that, but whether, if you could talk for a minute about the authority to do it and the considerations that you take into account when deciding whether it stays at 50, goes to 75, or even goes higher.
Well, in terms of the when and the whether, I really can't say, because we have this ongoing rulemaking, but I can say that I've been pretty upfront in the past that I do think it's something that we need to seriously consider, raising the level. And, some people will push back and say, well, hey, there aren't a lot of offerings being done at the top end of the range anyway, so why do you even care about raising the level? And that goes to the question that you asked about what do we think about when we're trying to figure out what to do. And I think one of the comments that I've heard pretty often is that if you were to raise the level to 75 or 100 million, you would bring in a whole different group of market participants. And that could actually have a really salutary effect on this market. And I think it could end up making RegA a more used exemption. And so to me, that's something that I'm always thinking about. We had so many years where RegA was not used at all. And so the Jobs Act was intended to make it usable. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about should we raise that number. We do want to be responsive to what Congress told us to do. And I think with the fact that they put in the statute a requirement, it's, under the title adjustment, right, that we should be thinking periodically about whether the number needs to be adjusted. I think we have to take that seriously. And if we're seeing a need, we should raise the number.
I hear all the time that if the number were just that bit higher, or double basically, that you'd get the early biotech companies who just eat money. You'd get them using RegA, and that would be much easier for them. Turning to one issue, which is crypto. You've been referred to as crypto mom. I think that diminishes, your very broad role in a number of areas of capital raising. But one of the things that we do want to know, and I know from the previous panel, one of the panelists mentioned the fact that he's been going through the registration process with his crypto for 2 and a bit years. If crypto is a security, what kind of security is it? And is it possible that there could be some influence, maybe from a commissioner, to have the staff not have issuers and their counsel do the homework for explaining how things should be treated, but more guidance? Can there be more guidance for crypto in the RegA space?
Well, I certainly think there needs to be more guidance for crypto in a number of different issues, and I think the SEC has not been particularly as forward thinking as I would like us to be in addressing what's a developing area, and it's an area that's developing so quickly. And so that takes me to the point of what is crypto. I think there's no one answer to that. We're seeing real-time development of what crypto assets are. And so, for example, in the DeFi space now, there are a lot of governance rights being built into these tokens, being coded into these tokens. And so that changes the nature and makes a lot of these tokens look a lot more equity-like than maybe some prior iterations of tokens are. But again, as with most things in this space, it's a facts and circumstances question. Now, RegA is intended to be for equity or debt. And so presumably if you're going to be a crypto issuer and you're going to use RegA, you got to fit into one of those buckets. And so that's part of the process that you go through when the staff is asking you questions. That's one of the things they're going to be asking you questions about. Where do you put yourself? And so I think that has to be answered. I do worry that RegA means that you definitely have claimed that you're in one of those categories, and that means that follows the token through its life, or at least until this point when you can go into the staff and tell them that you're decentralized, which again, we haven't provided guidance really to explain how that is going to work. But so I think it raises potential issues, but it seems to have worked for a couple issuers so far. So it is a route that's open to people. Now, I get that the process is really slow, and it's something that I'm hoping that I can keep pushing on to. We need to be faster on a number of fronts, and especially in an area like this where things are moving so quickly.
Yeah, I totally agreed. And I see in the chat that there is certainly some appetite for regulatory certainty. So urging the Commission to work with everybody in this space, including SROs. And here's Oscar popped up again. So I guess we're at the end.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. And Oscar, I apologize for my technical difficulties. This is very embarrassing for Crypto Mom, but here we are. So.
You know what? It happens to our CTO every single time. So don't feel bad. It's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you so much for making time for us today. And all our guests that are watching this today. I know we only covered most of the questions that we needed today. Sarah, great job as always. So everyone, we now move into the second phase of